Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP. John Paz. With me today is a former two-time OVW Tag Team Champion, a former NWA World Tag Team Champion, and of course, a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He is none other than Mr. Jax Dane. Jax, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me. Let me throw a couple more at you there.
Yes,
Very
yes.
important to me right now. Um, you said the tag team champion for the NWA with Rob Conway,
Yep.
the NWA World Title, obviously, but there was also the North American and the National championships for the NWA, and then a handful of other smaller local titles: NWA BOW, NWA Texas. I was the NWA Texas champion as well for a while. So, but the four big ones to me: the North American, the National, the Tag, and the World. Man, those mean the world to me. So, I think I'm the only guy in the NWA ever to hit the Grand Slam and hold those four titles. So,
Yeah, I was going to say Grand Slam winner. Pretty impressive.
yeah, man. I've got one more I want to add to that list: the TV title. Maybe at some point I'll get an opportunity to wrestle for that. But right now, Champion Series winner for NWA. Still got the opportunity to cash in anytime I want on Trevor Murdoch or Mike Knox or Nick Aldis if he becomes champ again. Right now I'm training for Trevor. When that shows his face, I'll have that opportunity to do that, and I'll be ready.
So what have you been up to? Like, what's going on in your world?
Oh man, well, a lot of people don't know this. In my battles with Crimson, I shattered my ear bone and I shattered my eardrum. So I had to have reconstructive surgery to have my eardrum rebuilt. And just as a matter of fact, this morning at my doctor's appointment, I got cleared to wrestle for this weekend's taping of Hard Times 2. But you could tell with my personality how I go to business, man. I'm not one of these guys that's going to jump on social media and tell you, oh, I'm having surgery, please set up this for me or do that for me or watch the comeback. It's going to be, it's just not my style, man. I just go get better and come back to work and try to be better than I was before I got injured.
So what happened with that with Crimson? I mean, he must have lit you up pretty bad for the
Yeah, man.
complete ear journey.
He's one of the most dangerous dudes in professional wrestling, man. He was my tag team partner for a long time, and he always brings the fight. And he's 6'6". He weighs 260 pounds, and when he puts his hands on you, it hurts. So he caught me so far, and this entanglement that he and I are in. I've come out on top by any means necessary. I mean, you've seen the story.
Yep.
I'm going to do. I think that may be what separates us at this point is I'm willing to do whatever it takes at this stage of my career. I know how valuable time is. I know what's left out there that I want to accomplish. So, I mean, I'm whatever it takes to get there. That's what I'm going to do. So that's why I'm in the position I am with him now. But regardless, man, he's one of the best heavyweights I've ever wrestled, and I've wrestled a bunch of great heavyweights, man. You can go down the list from Bobby Lashley to Tenzan to Kojima to Lance Archer to there's and Crimson's right there with all those guys, man. I mean, he's just a great professional wrestler. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful, he's talented, and I believe his best years are still in front of him as well.
For sure. With the NWA, with Billy Corgan, what's the thought on where you guys are headed and his vision? Are you kind of in line with what he's in line with?
He's my boss, so of course I'm in line with him, man. I mean, he's
You got to be, yeah.
well, you got to be. There's two ways to look at that. Yes, you got to be in. You got to be on board the ship, man. It's a ship that's sailing. You got to be on board. But if you're not on board, there's ways to approach that professionally and make your points understood and found, and not diminish your character or your integrity or come across in a way that would diminish your position on the roster. And I think Billy's really easy to talk to when it comes to things like that, or he has been for me. And I really like being on his team, even though I feel like right now he's stacking the odds against me time and time again to stay in a position of power. But that's okay.
Do you love his kind of old school nature? Like he's definitely mixing a new school, but he's very old school at heart.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's absolutely, and that's what fits best for me. I think that's why the NWA is the best fit for me. as a professional wrestler, this stage of my career, is what Billy Corgan looks for in a professional wrestler. I think I embody it. I mean, you look at our roster, you look at the guys on the roster. We make jokes all the time. There's a lot of grown-ass men that can fight in real life on this roster. That's not the case on all the other rosters. So I like where I'm at. I like his style. I think it's a great fit for me, and I'll continue to stay there.
It is true about that roster. I always mention this. I had Billy on that long. I mentioned it to him too. It's like JTG, who is no small man at all, is one of the smaller guys. If you really look at it, like Pope is one of the smaller guys. They're not small at all. You
No,
guys got some massive guys on the roster, including yourself.
no. In the business, man, I mean, the wrestling rosters have shifted so much. I
Yeah,
mean,
way
when I
too
first walked into the Ohio Valley locker room to get trained by Dr. Tom Pritchard and his team, the very first person I met was Travis Tomko. You can imagine how intimidating that was for someone that had never been ever in the wrestling business. I was a basketball player that decided I wanted to be a professional wrestler. So you had Tomko there, you had Heidenreich there, you had Luther Reigns, you had Matt Morgan. You could just go down the list. Shelton and Charlie had just left. Orton was in and out of there from time to time. I mean, just the sheer size of the roster of the guys that were being stars back then, so much different than what's being portrayed out there now, that I really am happy that I'm with the NWA, and that's where I belong.
When you go back to OVW, just going back all those years, how did you get into OVW? Was it something you recruited into, or like or do you just go in for a tryout?
No, it's a funny story, man, and I haven't told this story in quite a while because nobody's really asked how I got started with OVW, because I had never done independent wrestling. Okay, I was an athlete that wanted to be a professional wrestler. Huge fan growing up, huge fan even through the Monday Night Wars. But as I was coming out of college, my roommate in college, he was our point guard. His father was the lead cameraman for the WWE at the time. I believe he was the lead cameraman. His name was Bubba Dean Blau, and he was very good friends with Tom Pritchard. And after a game, probably late my junior year, he came to me and he said, "Hey, you've got everything it takes to be a professional wrestler. If you decide to try that route, give me a call and I'll put you in touch with the right people." Well, while I was in college playing basketball, I also used to train at a gym in Hickson, Tennessee, where Terry Gordy worked out. Terry Gordy and I are from the same hometown, Saudi Daisy,
Wow.
Tennessee. And Terry Gordy had mentioned to me one time, the only time I met him, only time I had conversation with him, we were working out side by side, and he looked at me and he said, "Kid, if you do anything but wrestle professionally in your life, you'll be wasting it." He said, "I see you in here all the time. You train hard, and you're pretty charismatic with how you carry yourself. You should think about giving it a shot." And I said, "Okay, thank you, sir." And didn't take it like to heart, like, "Oh man, that's what I've got to do." But that was always in the back of my mind. And then when the opportunity came up with the WWE and OVW to go try out for them in a private tryout for Dr. Tom, I just tried to make the most of it.
That's got to be pretty cool because it's not like you're in the wrestling world and all of a sudden you get recruited. It's like you're from an outside world, but like they see something in you, like, wow, look at this guy. Like we got to bring him in.
Well, I mean, and it's been no secret now that I've been in the business for the time that I've had. Athletes make great professional wrestlers. Just the work ethic, the physical capabilities that these guys have. So if you can get yourself a high level athlete that's willing to be humble enough to learn the business and get with the right trainers, you're going to have some very successful performers or entertainers, man. I mean, that's just wrestlers, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? Same goes with military guys. If you've got some discipline and you can be coached, and you align yourself with the proper coaching, and you have the tools that it takes, then you can get there.
Were you a part of the contracted class or the non-contracted class with
that's
OVW?
that's where it gets a little funny, man. So here's the story on that. So I still to this day am an executive for a major manufacturing company. Okay. So couldn't's not the right word. I wouldn't sign a contract with WWE had it been offered to me, because my personal job paid me at that time a little bit more than what the contract guys were making. Now, there was some talk that I was going to get offered a contract, but considering the situation I was in, uh, and Dr. Tom left the company right after a certain WrestleMania, that kind of put a cog in that wheel, okay? But the reality is, I went to every contracted class training. So I was in the contracted class with all of the contracted guys. Carlito, Lashley, Mike Taylor, Rob Conway, Matt Morgan. I mean, you go down the list. I trained with all of them. I was in the classes. Rip Rogers was the teacher, and then Bill DeMott was the teacher, and then Lance Storm came in, and I was in all those classes. So contracted, no. Trained the same, yes.
Because that's such an interesting dynamic, like learning more about developmental systems. Like, okay, you had the non-contracted guys and you had the contracted guys. They kind of don't care about the non-contracted guys. If you're part of the contract guys, they give a lot of effort. So if you're mixed in with those guys, that means like you're almost like clued into future plans. It
Yeah,
seems.
there was no different in how they treated me and the guys that were under contract.
Okay.
Zero difference.
You always hear like stories of not jealousy, but I've heard a few guys say like, "Oh, they were wanting that contract, but hey, how come this guy gets it? He's not from wrestling. I'm a indie worker." I mean, you always hear some of those stories of
Yeah, man, and you
guys.
have
Yeah,
that, and it's not just wrestling. I mean, it's any industry you're in, right? Pro basketball, hey, why is this guy playing ahead of me? Pro
right,
football, man,
right.
I should be the running back. Sales executive, oh, I should have that territory. We all think we all, and I think it's a curse and a blessing, but we all tend to think we should be somewhere that we're not, in somebody else's position. When in the reality, you just got to understand that the universe plays the cards the way they're supposed to be played. As long as you wake up every day preparing yourself to be the best human and the best professional wrestler that you can be, can't be disappointed in what happens. You can only control what you can control. You can't control what's outside of that. So once you get to a point where you can understand and approach life that way, jealousy tends to really slide out of the window.
Where do you go after OVW? Like you said, you weren't going to sign the contract, so like, where do you go? Do you go to your
Oh,
real
so
job, or
yeah. Well,
like?
here's my story, man. So I stopped wrestling for 8 years,
Wow, didn't
seven and a
realize
half,
that.
almost 8 years. So I got trained at OVW. Got trained by Rob Conway, Nick Dinsmore, um, and Rip Rogers. Right, Danny Davis had a little bit, but those were my three guys. Then my mom gets diagnosed with small cell lung cancer right when I got paired with a former tag team partner. We were starting to get a little traction, man. I mean, we weren't blowing the doors off of it. Of course, we felt like we were then, but looking back on it now with the experience that I have, we were starting to just kind of scratch and claw and get a little bit of traction. So my mom gets diagnosed with small cell lung cancer. And I think to myself, man, I can't do this. So I transfer back to Chattanooga, to where my family farm is, Saudi Daisy, Tennessee, Bakewell. And I spend the next 5 years, 6 years, spending time with my mother, making sure she gets back healthy, helping my dad on the farm, working a regular 9 to 5 corporate job. But the whole time I'm doing that, I'm wrestling matches in my mind. I'm staying physically, I'm training physically, not to wrestle, but to work out, staying in real good shape. So then I get transferred with my corporate job to Texas. And when I go to Texas now, it's been about 7 years since I was at OVW. But I maintained a lot of those relationships. Like Rob Conway is one of my best friends in the world. If we never wrestle together again, we will stay friends until the end of time. Ray Rowe falls in that category. Shane Taylor. You can go down the list of some pretty close guys that I've got. But anyway, I get to Texas, and at my corporate job in Texas, one of our guys that works in the warehouse says, "Hey, I run security for a wrestling company. I heard you used to wrestle." And I said, "Yeah, a long time ago." He said, "Would you like to come out?" So I went out. When I went out, man, at this point, going into that, I'd probably had 10 or 11 matches, maybe even less matches than that. I mean, true matches. I mean, I'd had a bunch of practice matches at OVW, but as far as being in front of a crowd, maybe 2 or 3 at OVW, 4 at the most. And then we get to Texas. So this is 7 years later. Now I'm in Texas, and I start wrestling for this company, and the bug hits, man. I mean, I want to get back into it. So now I'm really starting training, and now I'm realizing at the time that wrestling in San Antonio, Texas, where I was living, sort of, didn't have very good independent wrestling. So I partnered with Funaki and Rob Conway and a gentleman named David Schultz to start our own wrestling company, Branded Outlaw Wrestling at the time. And I was able to parlay some of my relationships with Bobby Lashley and Rodney Mack and Gene Snitsky and those guys to come in and help us out and build that company. And it was a lot of fun. And then there's some transition during that period going on with the NWA from one group to another group. I ended up being part of the guys that were with a new group. However, there tends to be this huge rumor that there was a ton of heat between the two groups, and there was, but Adam Pearce and Dave Marquez and some of those guys, Colt Cabana, have never, ever treated me anything than first class my entire life. Adam Pearce is a close friend. I talk to Dave Marquez probably once, maybe twice a week, sometimes once a month, just depending on how busy we are. So I'm in touch with Marquez still to this day. Think a lot of him as well. So now the NWA changes hands into a group that I'm affiliated with, right? So here I am, 20 matches in. They make Rob Conway the world champion, and it was a rocket ship for you. Next thing you know, I'm in New Japan, wrestling for 3 years for those guys, a few tag leagues, some pay-per-views. And looking back on it now, pretty astonishing looking back on it now, because I was in my 30 to 50 match range that whole time. So I hadn't even had 30, 40 matches when I was wrestling in New Japan. So being able to keep up and learn from those guys, man, trial by fire, was great education for me. And you know, I had Lance Archer and Harry Smith over there with me. I had Gallows and Anderson over there, or let's say I was over there with them. They were all real good to me. Kojima and Tenzin, great to me, to make sure that I learned what I needed to know on a slammed fast pace. Grateful to a lot of those guys.
What do you think about Bruce Tharp? Because Bruce kind of brought the NWA back into prominence a bit. I mean, New Japan was hot at that point.
Yeah, Bruce did a good job, man, with limited resources.
Right.
I think Bruce is a good dude that loves professional wrestling. And this isn't anything I wouldn't say directly to his face. He's a little flamboyant for my taste all the time, but he's a true friend. And if you ever needed something, he'd give you the shirt off his back. So I got a lot of respect for Bruce Tharp.
Obviously, his dad was involved in the business too. So, I mean, he has a
Yeah.
background in wrestling, but it was just crazy to think like, wow, Bruce Tharp owns the NWA. And it's like, oh my God, they're in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, wow.
Well, and Bruce has a lot of pretty significant relationships with some pretty significant wrestlers. I'm not going to go into who they are, but from that 70s, 80s era, that really, in my mind, to me, gives him a lot more credibility than people would ever even know about or he would ask for.
I've interviewed him a few times. I know a couple of those guys. One guy is one of my favorites of all time, but it's funny to think like, wow, Bruce, you're kind of like in with these guys more than people realize. They probably just think, oh, this random lawyer from Texas, but he's not.
Right. And he's well versed. His thinking, the way he thinks about some things is different than the way I think about some things, but that doesn't make him wrong. It just makes him different. So I enjoyed my time with Bruce. And I'm grateful for Bruce Tharp, because without Bruce Tharp and Rob Conway, I'm not a world champion. I'm not a world tag team champion. My resume is much thinner than it would have been.
So when you go over to New Japan Pro Wrestling, what's that like? Because you said you only 50 matches in, or you have very little experience, and this is some of the toughest guys. It's a little bit quote unquote strong style. They work a little bit more snug. What do you think about New Japan? I know you probably were aware, but what did you think when you go over? A little bit of culture shock?
No, not really. Well, no, not really culture shock, man, because they wrestle like I wrestle. It's pretty stiff but safe, kind of in there,
Yep.
firm. So the style fit me well. Um, so I really enjoyed my time there. I mean, looking back at it now, if we're just being honest, I couldn't enjoy the wrestling part of it because there was so much pressure on me to perform with so little experience. Don't hurt guys. Don't mess up when you're not supposed to mess up. There's so much pressure there because I don't have the instinctive repetition at that point to, if the shit hits the fan, it's going to be okay. If the shit hits the fan, then I'm going to be in trouble. And so I really had to work hard at not allowing for that. So a tour now the wrestling would be so much more enjoyable because I'm so much better as a professional wrestler now than I was 7, 8 years ago when I was touring in New Japan.
Was Conway shocked to have you back, like in the fold? Because he knows you from OVW, but you're back in the fold, the NWA years later. Was he surprised to see you again, or was he the one that was trying to recruit you in?
No, I brought Conway into the NWA.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
I thought it might be the other way
No,
around.
no,
Okay.
I brought him in. He is a wealth of knowledge. He is one of my best friends in the world. He's fantastic in the ring. Any situation you can be in, he can give you some advice on how to handle it. So it's yeah, I brought him in, and I'm glad I did. Anytime you can do something for one of your best friends, that's a great feeling.
You always hear that he was a great trainer. I know you were saying he trained you a little bit. You always hear that from the guys. Like, he's such a good wrestler, but he's also a good trainer.
Oh, he didn't train me a little bit. He trained me a lot. I mean, and what I mean by that is on the job training. Through New Japan and all the tag matches we wrestled when we were the world champs. He was so much further mentally ahead than I was at that time that I could just absorb so much. And the way he would explain it and the reason he would put me in certain situations and so on and so forth, I'll forever be indebted to him for that.
When New Japan, when you guys were over there and you were doing the tag league, I know 2013, 2014, do they say like, oh, we love this guy, like the typical gaijin, like a Terry Gordy, where like, oh my God, this guy looks like a monster. He's bigger than the normal wrestler. Like, did you fit in with what they wanted as far as the gaijins were
Oh
concerned?
yeah, I fit in fine and I got along. And if I would have been a better wrestler, I would have stuck there just with my look and my professionalism, how I carried myself, always early, stay late, help when you need to. Yes, sir, no, sir, listen, don't talk too much. I mean, the stuff that you're supposed to do all the time, but especially when you're, really early in your career, man, I knocked that shit out of the water because being an athlete, that's how you're trained most of the time, right? But at that time, I mean, honestly, I just wasn't a very good wrestler. Looked great, but didn't have the wrestling tools mentally. Physically, I had all the tools in the world. I just didn't have the wrestling tools mentally 7 or 8 years ago to be a mainstay in New Japan. So, and I'm not one of these guys that's going to sugarcoat it and say, oh, they used me wrong, or I didn't get an opportunity, or oh, they're booking me bad. That's all total bullshit. In my head, I just wasn't good enough at that time.
Do you want to go back?
Oh yeah, who wouldn't? I mean, it's one of the greatest places in the world to wrestle. If you love professional wrestling, you want to wrestle for New Japan.
What did you think of Ten Cozy? You got Tenzan, you got Kojima. What did you think of that team?
I
It's a
think a
damn
lot of them.
legendary team.
I think a lot of them. I mean, if we're pulling the curtain back just a little bit tonight, one of the greatest nights of my life was losing the NWA World Titles to Ten Cozy in Sumo Hall. I mean, that's to me, that's legendary. That's my favorite match in the history of my professional wrestling career because we're over there. I'm so green. I'm so nervous, and at the end of the night, when you were able to hear the crowd pop for those guys winning those titles the way they did, it was the biggest pop of the night. You know you've accomplished something, and man, that was a great feeling for me.
Why was it that like your favorite over like you winning? It did like winning and losing obviously doesn't matter, but like why that? Just the moment, kind of getting caught up in
Winning,
the crowd.
winning and losing does matter,
Okay.
in my opinion. However,
Yep.
because when I won the world title, I was ready to be a world champ.
Hmm.
When I lost the world tag team titles, knowing we were able to give the fans what we gave the fans was the most satisfying for me because of the reactions we got.
Gotcha.
And, well, I won the world title from Tenzon, which is, in my opinion, makes me the greatest modern day world champion because I think who you win the title from matters, right? And
Yeah.
Tenzon's one of the most decorated wrestlers in the history of professional wrestling. If you go back through his All Japan, New Japan, WCW, everything he's done, right? I mean, there's really not anybody more decorated than him. So to be able to win the world title from him, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that he thought enough of me to give me that match. So that's a huge deal. But back to your point, just the feel of knowing that you accomplished what you set out to accomplish. That was very satisfying for me.
Tenzon, just such a legend.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome, awesome that you were able to beat him for the NWA title. But take us back, like when did you learn you were winning? Like, were you surprised you were winning the title? Like, how did that all come about?
Um, well, I had just unified the national and the North American title for the NWA. And during that match, I tore my tricep off the bone against Tim Storm
Ooh.
in Vegas. And so I had to relinquish those belts. The Japan tour for Tenzon was already set. I already had a set date. And if I remember right, it was 11 and a half weeks from that night. So I go in for surgery, and the doctor says 18 to 20 weeks before you'll be able to wrestle again for recovery. And I said, no, you don't understand. I've got a match in 12 weeks,
Yeah.
and we got to get there. And he said, that's not going to happen. There's no way you'll be healthy enough. No way you'll heal. I said, okay, because you don't want to argue with your doctor, right? And he's about to do surgery. So he gets surgery done. And 12 weeks later, man, I was good to go, 100%. Wrestled Tenzon, came out on top.
Was that something where you just willed yourself, said, "There's no way I'm missing this. This is
Yeah,
happening."
that, and I had a great support staff, man. Ray Rowe at the time and I were really, really close. Eric from the Viking Raiders. He lived with me part of that time. He made every doctor's appointment with me that I had to go to for my tricep. And he just made sure that I was in a much better place mentally than I probably would have been without him. And he just pushed me, man, every day. Get up, we're gonna go do this. And so once I got through the therapy where you have to have the therapist to push you through that stuff. Once we got through that and I could get enough strength to get in the gym, I mean, we just went to work and we got there.
Who gives you like the notice? Hey, by the way, this is the match. Was it Bruce?
Yeah, it came from Tharp.
What did he say? It's like for you, like, hey, you're going to be carrying the NWA title. Like, that means a lot. I mean, you're
Oh
going to
yeah,
win the title. Like,
it means a whole lot, and to me he was just like, hey man, take some pictures with the belt. You're up tonight. Of course, we knew it was Tenzon's last night in the States as well, so you kind of had to know that they
right.
booked me last. So I mean, it was like everybody knew that's probably what was going to happen. So that's just the way it turned out. But for me, that night was also special because Tenzon, obviously, but Scott Norton was there. I had invited Scott Norton to come because if you recall, Scott and Tenzon were very good friends over in New Japan. So we had Tenzon in town in San Antonio. Scott was over in Houston. So I reached out to Scott and said, hey, man, we're going to have Tenzon in town. Man, I'd love to have you over as special guest for this event. He came over. Really good to see Scott in that aspect and spend some time with him. That day was a pretty special night for me. My now wife, that was the first night she ever saw me wrestle. Her and my stepson came to that event. So they saw me win the world title. So that was pretty cool that we can look back on that now, because at that point we had just met. So pretty cool deal there. So that night had a lot of good meanings for me.
Was it emotional too? Because the NWA champion, I know at this point it wasn't what it was like, in Flair and Dusty's day, but still, it's the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Was it emotional for you?
Yeah, well, of course, and for a couple of reasons. I had ended up losing my mother to lung cancer while um, the February before the August where I won it. But during that February, I was, or leading up to that February, that November before, I was in tag league over in Japan. And so knowing that I was sacrificing a little bit of time with my mother, who we knew was terminal at the time, to chase this dream, which that's exactly what she wanted for me as well. It just all kind of came to a head there, and like, yeah, this is what we were working for. So that night meant a lot to me. And then as far as the lineage of the belt, man, I mean, yeah, anytime you're carrying something that has meant so much to so many people, you don't want to be the guy that tarnishes that or lets that down or lets it lag. What the wrestlers can't control, and when I say that, I'm talking about guys, some modern guys like AJ Styles, or even a Brent Albright, and an Adam Pearce, and Tim Storm. What the wrestlers can't control, we don't have any control of the venues or the crowds or the promotion part as much as the team that you're working for. I mean, we're doing our part promoting, don't get me wrong, but what we can absolutely control is how we carry ourselves as champions. And a lot of those guys, man, were first class guys. Adam Pearce, first class. AJ Styles, first class. Tim Storm, first class. Albright, solid dude, man. I mean, so Colt Cabana, right? I mean, so there's some modern era guys that don't get the credit that some of the older guys do, and it's just a happen chance of time and era. Because in my opinion, you put Adam Pearce anywhere in the past, leading back before when the NWA was super relevant, like it is again today, then I think Adam's a huge star. So, I mean, obviously he's having success now at WWE, but he's been super talented for a long time.
I love the seven levels of hate, him
Yeah,
versus Colt. That was great.
yeah, big fan of that myself.
Kind of brought the NWA back into like the purview, like back into, hey, like, whoa, they're back.
Well, yeah, what's happening over there? We should go watch this.
Yeah, exactly. So you're the NWA champion now. What's the thought process in your head? Hopefully, long title run. You know it's going to be a long title run. Like, what are you thinking about? Because it's going to be over a year. You're going to be champ.
Yeah, 420 days. I don't know. It was kind of a play it by ear, see how it goes, see what else pops up, see what else is available. I mean, that's the way that played out.
What did you think about your run?
I loved it. I enjoyed it. I felt like I carried the belt with a lot of respect and a lot of dignity. And you know, I think I left at that time. I think I left the NWA better than I found it.
What did Bruce think of the run, or was he kind of working his way out? Because at this point, it almost seems like Billy comes into play a little bit, right? Is
Well,
that when he starts coming in?
Billy comes into play a little bit later after I lose to Tim Storm. Um, and I don't want to get into the details on all of that. Tim Storm was a fantastic world champion and a wonderful human being. But I had some opportunities outside of the NWA that I wanted to explore, and those opportunities weren't interested in me being the NWA world champion at the time.
Do you think that, let's say, Billy takes over, that opportunity doesn't happen? Do you think that you continue on as champion, or will things happen anyway with Tim Storm winning the title?
Um, Who knows? I mean, I know that me deciding to explore some other opportunities was really the catalyst. But professional wrestling is such a smorgasbord of holy shit. What's happening next? I guess you'd say is it very well could have been Tim Storm's time, even if I wasn't looking to explore those other opportunities.
I'm trying to remember the time frame. I know obviously Tim Storm wins. Billy is now in charge of the company. They do that 10 pounds of gold series and all the other stuff. Where do you end up? Is that when you go to Ring of Honor? And
Yeah, I do some stuff with
okay,
Ring of Honor. Absolutely. And we toyed with the idea of me becoming part of War Machine because I'm really close to Ray Rowe.
yeah.
Then we bounced that around a little bit. And then out of the blue, Impact called and paired me with Anthony, and we wrestled as the Veterans of War for Impact for a few seasons.
What did you think about Impact at that point?
Oh, it was a good time. I mean, I think it was the locker room was great, and then what was good for me at Impact is I met a lot of the guys that I had never spent time around, like Eddie Kingston. That was our first time, spending some significant time together. Andrew Everett was one of those guys that I ended up thinking a lot of. Of course, Crimson, Anthony Lacasio, Aldis. I mean, there's just a lot of guys there. I got to reconnect with Matt Morgan, Tyrus. I mean, Fala. I mean, you go down the list of all the guys, right, that were working at Impact and under the Jeff Jarrett regime when we first went down there. I think it worked out well.
Were you thinking more long term with them? Because I feel like it could have been a longer run, was that the perfect amount of time? You wanted in?
That was one of those things that was out of our control. I know that Anthony and I asked for our releases, and they gave them to us, and we did it very quietly with a lot of respect from both sides. It's because you know how I mean, it's no secret today with some of the podcasts or some of the writers, they want to sensationalize everything and this is happening and so and we neither side wanted any of that. We just wanted to kind of be quiet about it and slide it out under the rug. Felt like that was better for both parties, and I'm really thankful for Impact for treating me with such class with giving us our release.
Was there a reason you wanted out? Were you headed somewhere else?
Just at that point, I think Jeff was probably gone from Impact as well, and we were a couple of the guys that he brought in. So, I mean, it's no secret how this business works in a lot of ways, and we just felt like it'd be better for us to go a different direction.
Right. If the new regime, you're not quote unquote their guys. It could go in a different direction for you guys.
Fair enough.
With Jeff, though, what was the relationship like with Jeff Jarrett? Was there a relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I like Jeff. He's always treated me well, and I've gotten to know Jeff. If you're familiar with Crimson at all, he runs Tried and True Pro, right? And it's probably, man, when he's up and running and making it, and we're not dealing with COVID and some of the restrictions that put into place in the city up there, man, he's got the top independent wrestling promotion in the country, bar none. Production, live venue, draw. I mean, every show is 12 to 1,500 people. It's a sea of people. The production's great. So we just started when we left Impact. We started focusing on that, and Jeff was in and out of that to some degree during the early stages of that. So that's where I really got to kind of continue my relationship with Jeff Jarrett, and then we did some Global Force stuff, some Music City Bowl stuff, and I think we're even going to do some of that again this year.
I think Jeff now owns or partially owns a piece of a baseball team. I think I just saw that.
Maybe it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, he's all over the place. I just talked to him recently, and it's like, man, you have 9 lives. Like once somebody thinks like he's down and out, nope, he pops up here. They think he's gone. Nope, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys. You can't keep him down. If Global Force is done, he pops up here. It's crazy.
Seems to land on his feet.
Yeah. Yeah, he must have. I don't know. He must be a cat. I mean, he's got those 9 lives. Like you said, landing on his feet. So, was there ever any plan of you to be in Ring of Honor more long term though? Because I know you mentioned maybe War Machine. That didn't happen. But was there any long term plans for Ring of Honor?
No, not really. We talked about it some, but really couldn't get into a position to where both sides were comfortable. I mean, I think the world of them. I mean, at one point, Anthony and I were talking to them, and they just flat out told us, "You're too big for our roster. You two guys are too big for our roster." It's after War Machine had left and so on, and that may ruffle some feathers that I said that, but that was the exact words they told us. So, but Ring of Honor's roster is fantastic. Even today, if you look at it, it's great. So we had some good matches, or I had some good matches over there. Donovan Dijak, War Machine, worked Taven and Bennett a handful of times, worked those guys over in Japan some. And now Taven and Bennett are swinging back through NWA, and that's a real catch for NWA to have those guys in the locker room.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty interesting the way Ring of Honor is kind of, going away until supposedly April of 2022.
Right?
That means all their talent, like Red Titus is going to be on an NWA show. So it's
Yeah.
like they've got some good guys that could possibly pop up in NWA.
Yeah, man. Oh, they've got a fantastic roster full of wrestlers. So who knows what'll happen?
It's interesting. You guys are too big. I never heard that before in wrestling. Like, hey, you guys are too big. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
How big are you officially? Because I remember I was talking to Tim Storm. I said, Tim Storm, you're like, you're pretty big. He says he's like, I think he's 6'2", 250. So I was like, wow, Jack Dane like kind of not towered over you, but he looked a lot bigger than you when he beat you.
Yeah, man. When it just depends on how hard I'm training and how much I'm eating. But 6'3", 290, 295, legit. I mean, so I'm bigger than you think. I guess that's you get I thought you'd be bigger a lot. It's like, oh no, you're bigger than I thought you'd be.
Yeah, when you see you, you're like, man, this Crimson too. It's like, man, these guys are huge. These guys are monsters. I guess I can kind of see that because Ring of Honor did kind of go with the, I don't know, more high flyers, more for a while. So I could see you guys kind of towering over some of the roster.
Shannon Moore, we worked that NWA 70 event where Crimson and I wrestled Shannon and Steve, and Shannon said, "Jesus, Jax, you should probably go put a shirt back on. I've never seen you that big." So, and I got a lot of respect for Shannon Moore. So he's a great dude too, man.
So with NWA and everything going on, like what happened with Crimson? I mean, you guys are teaming. You guys break up. What's the animosity between you guys? What's
Well,
going
man,
on?
I had one rule: don't leave your wingman, and he left me. He left me to go try to win a match by himself with me injured on the sideline. I mean, what's important, winning a match or your wingman? I mean, so when he left me, I mean, that burnt that bridge. That bridge is done, dead to me, never to be rebuilt.
How did you get back in NWA with Billy? Like, how did you kind of? Because I know obviously you left, you did Ring of Honor, you did Impact. How'd you get in? Did Billy, have his eye on you the whole time? He always wanted you back in.
Pat Kenny called me and said, "Billy Corgan really wants you to be a part of the roster this year. Please come to Atlanta."
Just that easy, just that simple.
Yep.
So what's next for you in the NWA? Like what's coming up? I know they got some big tapings coming up.
Yeah, we got Hard Times 2. We got a new show we're filming on Friday for YouTube. There's going to be a new show on YouTube, I believe. And then we've got our regular seasonal taping. So we'll see. I mean, one thing that is a little different with Billy Corgan than most of the companies I work for is you don't have an idea till you get there. So you got your advertised matches from, then in Hard Times, I'm wrestling Mims, which is one of Crimson's students with Crimson as his second. So we'll see how that goes. But, that's what I've got for Hard Times pay-per-view, but I'm sure I'll have 6 or 8 matches throughout the tapings. And man, just excited to get down there and get my boots on.
What do you think about that structure? Because it always seems like you guys are, off for a while and then you tape basically 4 days of stuff almost. Like, do you like that? Is it easier for you?
Yeah, I like it. It works well for me, man. For me and what I like, you go down there, you do your job, then you're free until you have to go back down there and do your job. And it allows you to heal up. It allows you to get into better shape. It allows you to work on some things that maybe you want to add or take away. It also allows me to focus on my corporate job where I'm an executive, and that is very high level and very important to me. So that's why the NWA is such a perfect fit for me. I mean, it would take some major influencing to get me to do anything else.
Did your corporate job ever say like, this guy is pretty scary? It looks like a wrestler, and then
Oh
they'd be
yeah,
like,
I mean they know I wrestle. They
oh,
support it.
okay,
It's like a running joke. So, but I'm super grateful for them. But yes, I am the wrestler.
yeah, it got to be. Yeah, you got to figure that. With Billy, it's funny. I interviewed him a while ago, and I was asking him just like the structure, and he was saying there's no, as far as like no teleprompter, quote to speak. There's no script. Do you like that better? Like
Love it.
it's just go. Like here's
Love
the
it.
podium, go.
Love it. Love it. You give me a little bit of direction on the business you want me to get across, the message you want to get across. You give me 15, 20 minutes and then get out of the way. And that's where I'm at my best. Man, the great thing is Billy produces most of that. And so he's in your pocket when you're doing it. And if he wants you to tweak something, he'll tell you. And then you get the opportunity to tweak it right there. And it's a great format for me, for my skill set, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
I like that structure too because like when Nick Aldis and Tim Storm were out there cutting promos, you could tell it wasn't scripted at all. They're kind of
No.
going back and forth. I mean, that's old school wrestling. I mean, it's like Flair or Dusty going back and forth. That's the good stuff.
Well, and in wrestling in general, we used to focus on telling stories with our wrestling and our promos. Now we focus on reading scripts and practicing matches, not telling many stories in the ring. I think that's what separates the NWA from other promotions to some degree, is that we are a storytelling company.
What do you think happened like in wrestling where there was that major shift? Because it's strange. Like old school wrestling is there's no script. I mean, there's bullet points and stuff, but there's no script. There's no guys in the back practicing the matches. I mean, what happened, do you think, in the business? What was the shift?
Ask me that in 3 years when I'm done, and I'll speak real freely for you.
Don't want to get out of that shovel and
Yeah, man. I mean, it basically boils down to just ask me in 3 years. I'll be blatantly honest, in 3 years, maybe 2.
Okay, I'm getting the shovel. 2 years. We're getting ready.
Yeah.
Because it definitely, like philosophy wise, I mean, it's completely different and different structure. I feel like NWA is great because it goes back to the old school.
Right.
You know, it goes back into that bygone era, but it's with a new school flavor.
Right. Absolutely. And the biggest, I think for me, and I could be totally off base, I could be 100% wrong, but I think one of the biggest problems in wrestling right now is wrestlers don't know how to read the crowd. You've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G planned, and that's what you go out and do. And A, B, C, D, E, F, or G may not get the reaction you thought it was going to get. So you probably should have turned right or turned left, and you didn't. Make sense?
Yeah, it's one of
So,
those things too. It's like they don't realize if you don't have that base or if you don't have that ability to ad lib. If there's a screw up in A, B, C, D, let's say C gets knocked out of, like you could tell the match goes out of whack, and then they got to pick up D, E, F. But it's like I don't know. It's you could
well,
tell it's
they do the same thing over again and do it right.
yeah,
Yeah, I've seen
yeah.
that once or 20 times. But again, I mean, wrestling is hot right now. People like watching it, so maybe that is the new formula.
To an extent, but I don't know. Sometimes watching it, it turns a lot of fans, I think, off. Like a lot of lapsed fans. Like there could be more fans. I know it's getting hot again, but there's could be more fans where guys maybe they turn on for a few weeks, they watch and they get tuned out
Right?
because it's not what they were used to when they were watching. I mean, Macho Man, to a certain extent, would have stuff planned out in his matches, but he knew that if something went awry, if the crowd reacted a certain way, you got to go in this direction. You got to change it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yep.
don't know if these guys have
Yeah,
that ad
and
lib ability.
that's a very, very fair assessment of what's going on today. However, you've also got to keep in mind when I was watching Saturday Night Main Event as a child, right?
Mhm.
there were only about 5 things on TV I could watch at that
Hmm.
time. So you got a 20% chance of me tuning into wrestling just by default. Um, we don't have that luxury these days because of social media entertainment, TV entertainment, streaming entertainment. So now, if you're going to be a successful wrestling company, you've got to really get some stuff out there that's going to draw the masses. And as you can see, it's hard. I mean, it's hard if you look at the ratings from some of the wrestling shows versus some of the ratings to some other shows that are on. We fall a little bit behind those. But I think what we will see happen over the next 2 or 3 years is the competition that's out there now between the companies is going to drive the companies to get better. Competition makes everybody better. So I think that'll be a positive thing.
What do you think about AEW? Would you ever consider them? Are they a possibility, or not really your style, so to speak?
No, I would absolutely consider them. I've got a couple of really good friends that are over there. The issue with AEW is scheduling. I mean, just can I make it work with my corporate stuff? Because I'm at an age and a place in life where making sure that corporate stuff is very important to me.
So WWE obviously would be out the window just because of your job. You wouldn't even think about it.
Well, you never say never because there are dollar signs out there that would offset that, right?
Right.
And they tend to pay them from time to time. It's just could you get good enough to warrant those kind of dollars?
Size wise, they always say Vince loves size. Size wise, I feel like you would be right in his prototypical Vince loves the big guys, Lashley, Lesnar kind of
Oh yeah,
spot.
I mean I fit right in with Bobby and Brock and even a guy that you don't realize is as big as he is Shelton.
Hmm.
Shelton's a massive human being, man. So yeah, I fit in there with the big guys. There's no doubt that I can compete with them physically.
And they always say Shelton was like the best athlete out of all those guys, which
He's
is
the
people don't realize it.
he's the best athlete I've ever seen. He was my neighbor for a couple of years. He's the best athlete I've ever seen in professional wrestling. I don't know one better.
It's rare to see a guy that's like 250 that can just jump from the floor to the top of a rope like that. Like you
There's
see Mysterio do that, or somebody like smaller, but not that
there's
big.
there's nothing that human can't do in the ring. He's physically the most gifted professional wrestler I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's I don't know. I feel like he's always underused for years wherever he was. He was great in New Japan though, but underused in WWE. I feel like.
Man, you see how far this ear sticks out because it's swollen from that surgery?
Yeah, what the hell happened there?
Yeah, I'm
Crimson,
telling you,
Dan
major
Crimson.
reconstructive surgery. You just didn't know about it because I didn't flood it with social
Yeah,
media.
but I'm saying, damn Crimson. It's all his fault.
Nah, you have that on. You know what you sign up for in this business.
But he might deserve a receipt, though. You know what I mean?
Maybe I gave it to him first. Maybe it was a receipt.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, true. So as we hit the wind down here, we head towards the finish. I know you mentioned obviously the tag match was your favorite match, but do you have any other favorite matches? Maybe some singles matches you could think of, or maybe some favorite opponents that just stick out that you love, or somebody on YouTube get like, oh, I got to
I
check out
wrestled.
Jack Dane matches.
Yeah, man, I wrestled Jeff Cobb. That was a lot of fun. Wrestling Jeff Cobb was a lot of fun. I wrestled Shelton in New Japan. That was a lot of fun. I've wrestled Charlie Haas a handful of times. That's always a nice little stroll in the park, I guess you could say. So I've wrestled Lashley. I mean, I've had some great opponents, man. I mean, um, wrestled Ray Rowe. I love it all, man. I just love professional wrestling.
What is next for you in the business? I know NWA, but like outside of that, what's next? Is there something else you want to achieve, or anything else that you want to look after?
Well, I just want to continue working to be the best professional wrestler that I can be. I mean, I think even as you get a little later in your career, you tend to rest on your laurels sometimes, but I think I'm more motivated now than I've been in a long, long time. So wrestling wise, I just want to keep getting better every day and see what happens. I mean, there's some guys out there that are really extending the longevity of a career and being successful later in their later years. So who knows? I could probably have 6 or 10 years left, maybe, just if I stay healthy and all goes well. On a personal level, just continue to be a better husband and do the best I can, take care of my kiddo, provide for my family. I mean, that's all that's important to me.
Any dream matches that guys you never wrestled for that you'd love to be able to
Oh
wrestle?
man, Trevor Murdoch for the NWA World Title.
There you
That's a
go.
dream match. I mean, if we want to keep just strictly in the NWA for a minute, uh, Matt Mordetsky, Adonis, Chris Adonis, Tyrus, um, Nick, and Trevor.
Anybody outside? Maybe some Japanese guys you never get the chance to work?
Um, man, maybe I wrestled Tanahashi in a tag match, but a
Hmm.
singles match with Tana or a singles match with Okada would be fantastic. I'd like to wrestle Carl Anderson in a singles. I've wrestled him in a tag. As far as a couple of more, Jacob Fatu would be a banger, I believe. Somebody asked me the other day if I'd ever want to wrestle Hammerstone. The answer to that's yes. There's some guys out there that I would, AJ Gray, some guys I'd like to get down with. So wouldn't mind seeing some of that happen.
It seems like a lot of the big guys are or harder to come by, really. Like Hammerstone, Fatu. You know what I mean? Like back in the day, a Warlord and Barbarian. You had all these monstrous guys.
Right.
Now it's definitely harder to come by.
Yeah, there's 15 or 20 of us.
Yeah, that's it.
So, but that's how the business has changed.
Where do you think all the big guys are going? Are they going to UFC or something? Like where are all
No,
the
I
giants
just
going?
I just think that I just think there was such a shift in the business, right? I mean, even when Vince and even when WWE and AEW, they've got some monsters. They don't really let them be monsters. So, if you tune in to an action movie and there's a really big guy and he doesn't get to play the part like a really big guy, you think, this action movie is probably not very good. No fault of the guy who's playing the role, he just might not be in the right spot. So imagine if Marvel would have booked Thanos to not be inevitable.
Right.
Whole different movie. There's not many of those guys in pro wrestling. Monsters that just go out there and kill, and then when the time's right, be killed.
Yeah.
They're just that formula. They don't use it much anymore.
It's just crazy to think like
I
that
mean,
would be
I mean,
the land of time.
AEW's got Lance Archer. He's 6'6", 6'7", almost 300 pounds, as athletic as anybody in the business. Professional, gets there early, stays late.
Yeah.
You know,
Pretty crazy. I mean, they don't have many of those guys too. He
yeah.
should
I
be
mean,
he should be
few
tossing the people around. Yeah.
and far between for what I like. But obviously, their formula is working because they got good viewership and they got sponsors, and it's just not the thing about wrestling. Rip Rogers told me this probably my second or third day. He said wrestling is like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. You just got to be one of those flavors. So
Great
there's
advice
something
from Rip.
yeah, there's something for everybody, right? And the big guy is not one of the popular flavors right now.
So, any regrets in the business? Anything you wish you could change, or anything you wish you would have done?
No, man, I try to live a regret-free life, to be honest with you, because I think every decision you make leads you to where you are. Would I have made some different decisions if I didn't know what the outcome was going to be? Maybe. But knowing where I sit right now, married to who I'm married to, with the kid that I got, I wouldn't change a thing. Because all that wouldn't be guaranteed if I made different decisions along the way.
And like we mentioned before, Grand Slam champion. I don't even know what it would be if you're the 5 if you had the TV title, whatever that would be. But that could be next on your list. Maybe even Murdoch.
That's what we're shooting for.
So before I let you go, please give us all your plugs where everybody can find you, social media and otherwise.
Oh man, Instagram is Jex Dane. Twitter is the Jex Dane. Facebook is J Dane Lehman. Some companies I think you should check out are You versus You Training, out of Nashville, Tennessee. Nutrition Factory in Smyrna does a real good job for me on my supplements. Future Legend Clothing is a good dude. Just a great place to. Wrestling is a great community, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Great stuff, Jax. Thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Hard Times 2, Fight TV, December 4th. Don't miss that, man. It's going to be a hell of a card. I mean, you've seen it. They've promoted it. Camille, Melina, Nick, and Tom.
Tom.
Yeah, Bram. Trevor and Mike Knox. The girls' tag match, the junior heavyweights match, the ROH tag match. I mean, this card's loaded, man. I mean, I feel lucky to be on it.
Jax, again, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time, man. You have a great day.